Hello there. Today I'm going to be taking up a very important section from the second chapter, and this session is about the structure of ovule and formation of female gametophyte. Now before we begin, let's be very clear with our learning objectives. Number 1, to describe the structure of an anatropous ovule. 2, to explain the process of megasporogenesis. 3, to differentiate between megasporogenesis and microsporogenesis. 4, to interpret monosporic development of an embryo sac. 5, to illustrate the stages of formation of the embryo sac. And 6, to draw a label diagram of a mature polygonum type of embryo sac. So we know that a female reproductive organ is a pistil. Now the pistil is carried on the thalamus, and pistil constitutes 3 main parts in it: stigma, style and ovary. Stigma is the structure that receives the pollen grain, while style is the slender tube which connects the stigma and ovary, and thereby the pollen tube can be eventually growing through it. And the ovary contains ovule. Now the number of the ovule can vary in different species. Some of the ovaries can have just a single ovule in it, while in certain other ovaries you can be having several numbers of ovules. Now technically, what we call to a wall of the pistil is, or a carpel is, gynoecium. And depending on the number of carpels in a gynoecium, it can be further grouped into 2 types. It can be a monocarpellary gynoecium, or it can be a multicarpellary gynoecium. A monocarpellary gynoecium is a gynoecium containing only a single carpel in it, whereas a multicarpellary gynoecium is a gynoecium containing 2 or more than 2 of the carpels. And if the gynoecium are multicarpellary type, then it can be existing in 2 different states. If all of the carpels are remaining in the free state, unfused state, then the carpels are technically referred to as apocarpous multicarpellary gynoecium. And if the carpels are fused together, forming into a kind of a single unit, then such kind of a multicarpellary gynoecium are known as syncarpous gynoecium. Now what we are going to be learning in this section is, we will learn about the structure of an ovule. And we know that ovules are located inside the ovary. Now, inside the ovary, that is, inside the ovary, the cavity of the ovary, there are tissues which are responsible for forming the connection between the ovary and ovule. And these tissues are technically referred to as placenta. Let us study the structure of an ovule. Ovules can be differentiated based on their shapes and orientation. Now, here is the structure of a typical ovule, which is also referred to as anatropous ovule, and this is the most common type of ovule seen in angiosperms. Now in the anatropous ovule, the orientation is said to be upside down or inverted, and basically we speak in terms of the orientation of micropyle. So if the micropyle is orienting downward, then the ovule becomes anatropous ovule. And the ovule forms a connection to the ovarian cavity, that is to say, it connects to the placenta. Okay, and the way in which the ovules connect to the placenta forms different kinds of placentation. If we have to see to this figure, we see that the ovule gets connected to the base of the ovary, and hence this can be an example for basal placentation. Likewise, we have all different kinds of placentation in different species. So the connection of the ovule to the placenta happens through a stalk-like structure, which is called as funicle. And the funicle attaches to the body at a point which is called as hilum. And the body is surrounded by 2 layers of integuments, because of which angiospermous ovules are said to be bitegmic. Right? And the 2 layers of the integuments are named as outer integument and inner integument. But the 2 integument layers aren't a complete layer. We have an opening which is the place where the integuments are not meeting. And this opening is technically the opening, the end which is called as micropylar end. or this is called as the micropyle, and the end opposite to the micropyle is chalazal end. Okay, and these two ends are important in terms of our further understanding with megaspore formation. So the opening of the integument is called as, or the ovule is called as micropyle, and the end opposite to the micropyle forms the chalazal end. Now at the center of the ovule, there are in an immature ovule, there are compactly arranged parenchymatous tissues, and these tissues are referred to as nucellus. Now different ovules can have different amounts of nucellus. Okay, and nucellus is the tissue from which we have to have the differentiation of a megaspore mother cell. So the nucellus tissues eventually would grow, and then one of the nucellus cells differentiates into megaspore mother cell. And that megaspore mother cell should be then giving rise to a megaspore. And this process of the formation of the megaspore from a megaspore mother cell is referred to as megasporogenesis. And that happens inside the ovary, especially in you can say, mature ovule. Now, as the ovule matures and prepares for the formation of megaspore, of the many cells of the nucellar tissue, one cell would grow in size and then differentiate into MMC. And this MMC later would be going into the process of megasporogenesis. Alright, so let's try to learn with the process of megasporogenesis, which is in a way following a very similar pattern as that of microsporogenesis. So, this megaspore mother cell, which is also a diploid cell, would then enter into meiotic division. So megaspore mother cell goes through meiotic division. And because we know that each meiosis has two divisions. So after completing the first meiosis, this diploid megaspore mother cell would result in a cluster of two daughter cells. And these two daughter cells are collectively known as megaspore diet. Right? It forms megaspore diet. And if we have to look into the ploidy of these two daughter cells, because meiosis is a reductional division, right? So a diploid megaspore mother cell on undergoing the first meiosis would be resulting in two haploid daughter cells, collectively known as megaspore diet. And the megaspore diet haploid daughter cells would further complete the second meiosis and finally would be giving rise to four daughter cells. And these four daughter cells again form a kind of a cluster. Alright, and in case of the megaspore tetrad, the cluster has to be always in a linear form, right? So it forms a linear cluster of cells called as megaspore tetrad. And all of the four daughter cells here are haploid cells, alright? So such is the process through which we have the formation of megaspore taking place. Haploid megaspores formed through the meiosis from a diploid megaspore mother cell. And this process is megasporogenesis. The process of megasporogenesis is different from microsporogenesis in certain ways, such as if we look into the number of megaspore mother cell, we learned that only a single cell of the nucellus would grow in size and differentiate into MMC. And such a diploid MMC on undergoing meiosis results in the formation of four haploid cells known as megaspore tetrads. But the arrangement of these four megaspore cells are always to be in the linear state, unlike microspore tetrad. Microspore tetrads can be linear, or it can be tetrahedral, or it can be even in other cluster. But megaspore tetras are always to be in linear state. And not only that, out of the 4 megaspore daughter cells, 3 of the megaspore cells are degenerative, whereas only 1 survives and 1 remains functional. And this 1 functional megaspore would then be giving rise to a female gametophyte. So as I said, out of the 4 megaspore, 3 are going to be degenerative. And the ones which are going to be degenerative can be understood by marking the ends. So I'm going to be marking the ends here. So let me say this end is the micropylar end and this end is the chalazal end. Okay, so of the 4 daughter cells, 3 of the megaspore towards the micropylar end. These 3 megaspores are degenerative. So let me say these are degenerative microspores. So they are going to be eventually disintegrating, whereas the microspore towards the chalazal end is said to be the functional megaspore. So this functional megaspore is responsible for forming the female gametophyte. And such kind of the development which occurs from a single megaspore is referred to as monosporic development. So in monosporic development, only a single megaspore. So which is this megaspore? This is the megaspore. Which is said to be functional and they are towards the chalazal end, and that functional megaspore would then be giving rise to female gametophyte. So if such is the nature of formation of a female gametophyte from a megaspore, it's referred to as monosporic development because only 1 megaspore is used here for the formation of a female gametophyte. Now, this kind of the female gametophyte can also be technically referred to as embryo sac. So a female gametophyte is also referred to as an embryo sac, and the embryo sac of a monosporic you can say female gametophyte can also be of different types. And what we are going to be looking into is, we are going to be looking into one of the common types of monosporic embryo sac. Okay, and that is an embryo sac called as polygonum embryo sac. And we will look into the details about the formation of a polygonum embryo sac. Well, let us now trace the process through which we have the formation of a polygonum embryo sac. So as we have learnt, in a monosporic development, it's only the functional megaspore to be giving rise to an embryo sac. So such a functional haploid megaspore would first initially undergo into 3 repeated mitotic divisions. Now when I say 3 repeated mitotic divisions, each of these mitosis is not followed by a cytokinesis, and as a result of which this uninucleated megaspore would be first giving rise to certain multinucleated cells. Okay, so let's try to look into each of these mitosis one by one. So a single functional megaspore, on undergoing first mitosis without a following cytokinesis, it would be resulting in a binucleate cell. Alright, so first mitosis completed without cytokinesis, giving rise to a binucleate cell. Then such a binucleate cell, on undergoing yet another mitosis, so let me say after completing the second mitosis, it would be then becoming into 4-nucleated cell. Okay, without cytokinesis, so thereby forming 4-nucleated cell. And on completing the third mitosis, right after the second mitosis, this cell would then be becoming into nucleated cell. And such an 8-nucleated cell would then eventually mature into a polygonal embryo sac. Okay, so a functional megaspore had underwent through 3 repeated mitosis without cytokinesis, resulting in an 8-nucleated cell. And this 8-nucleated cell would then be undergoing, we can say, reorganization and cellularization. So this would then be undergoing cytokinesis, alright, as well as it would be reorganizing. So after cytokinesis and reorganization, this 8-nucleated cell would then be transforming into a mature embryo sac. And a mature embryo sac is going to be having 7 cells and 8 nuclei. So this is a mature embryo sac. Or this is a female gametophyte. And in this female gametophyte, because of cellularization, which is to say because of cytokinesis, now the nucleus has obtained their own cytoplasm and cell wall. And what we see is the 8 nuclei had reorganized in such a way that 3 of the nuclei are towards one end of the ovule and 3 of the nuclei are at the opposite end of the ovule, and 2 nuclei, one each from the 2 ends of the ovule, had moved into the central cell and had now become into a cell with 2 nucleus, and these 2 nuclei are referred to as polar nuclei. Okay, and now what we see here is, if we count the number of nuclei, we can find that there are 8 nuclei, 3 at this end, 3 at this end, and 2 at the center. And as I said earlier, for us it's very important to be aware about the location of or the poles of the ovule. So if I say this is the M end, that is the micropylar end, and this is the C, that is the chalazal end. So what has happened is 3 of the cells are arranged in the micropylar end. And these 3 cells are collectively known as egg apparatus. So we have 3 cells here, and these 3 cells are collectively referred to as egg apparatus. Okay, now the name egg apparatus because out of these 3 cells, this cell which is at the center of the 3 cells, this is the egg. So this actually is the egg cell, or basically this is the female gamete. So the female gamete or the egg cell is located towards the micropylar end in the egg apparatus. Right? Then there are 3 cells which are organized at the chalazal end, and these 3 cells are collectively known as antipodals. Antipodals. And then the cell which is the biggest and which is at the center, which occupies the central part of the ovule, this is called as central part of the embryo sac. This is called as the central cell. So this is the central cell. So in this way, what we see here is a mature embryo sac has 7 new cells and 8 nuclei, right? So which are the 7 cells? The 7 cells are 3 of the cells of egg apparatus, 1 cell of the central cell, and 3 cells of the antipodals. So collectively we have 7 cells and 8 nuclei. 8 nuclei because the central cell has 2 nuclei. Okay, and these 2 nuclei, which are known as polar nuclei, can later be fusing together, and after the fusion it can be even referred to as a secondary nucleus. Okay, so such is a mature embryo sac or a female gametophyte, and a female gametophyte having 7 cells and 8 nucleus, where 3 of the cells are at the micropylar end, 3 of the cells are at the chalazal end, and there is a big central cell having 2 nucleus, right, formed from one single functional megaspore, is referred to as a polygonum embryo sac. Okay, so these are all the different changes that are taking place inside the ovule. These are all taking place inside the ovule, right, on maturation, and as a result of which, now in a mature ovule, we will not be having much of the nucellular tissue, nor we will be having any of the megaspores, but it has to be having a single, in most of the cases, a single embryo sac containing 7 cells and 8 nuclei. And these cells are then going to be participating in double fertilization. Finally, let's have the diagram of a mature anatropous ovule. So when we say it's a mature ovule, it will not be having much of the nucellular tissue, but the central region is now occupied by a single large embryo sac or the female gametophyte. Now the question is, what about the ploidy of these nucleus? Or what about the ploidy of the cells? Alright, so if we consider the ploidy of each of these nucleus, each of the 8 nuclei, since they are formed from a haploid megaspore functional cell, so because the haploid megaspore functional cell underwent into mitotic division, so each of these nuclei are all going to be having the same haploid condition. Alright, so the 7 cells of an embryo sac containing 8 nuclei are all haploid nucleus. Alright, now later, as we have the fusion of the 2 nucleus of the central cell, then the central cell can be becoming into a, you can say, diploid cell. Right? Otherwise, if we talk in terms of each of the nucleus, then it is a haploid nucleus. So the nucleus are all haploid in a polygonum embryo sac, as well as if we look into the genetic makeup of these 8 nuclei. Right? All of these 8 nuclei, since they are formed from the single functional megaspore, they are all going to be identical, genetically identical. Okay, so that's how we can be having some characterization of a polygonum embryo sac, where all of the nucleus or all of the cells are going to be genetically identical because they are formed from a monosporic megaspore.
Here are the assignment questions. Out of the 7 questions, 2 are purely diagrammatic. Question number 4 and question number 6. I want each one of you to practice these 2 diagrams as they are possible questions in the CBSE examination.